Raise your hand if you hate exercise. Is your hand up? If so, you are definitely not alone. And believe me, until just a few years ago, I was right there with you. I thought exercise had to be miserable. It was basically my punishment for all the ways I was failing to create the body I wished I could have. And maybe you feel that way too. If so, today's episode might just change everything. Hey, welcome to the Feel Better, Live Free podcast brought to you by Thinlicious. I'm your host, Ruth Sukup, and here we'll talk about everything from the science of weight loss to practical tips for making your health a priority in the midst of a busy life. It's a little bit nerdy, a little bit funny, and a little bit revolutionary. So buckle up, friend, because it's about to get real. Hey there, and welcome back to the Feel Better, Live Free podcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ruth Sukup, and I'm the founder of Thinlicious and the creator of the Thin Adapted System, as well as the New York Times bestselling author of 7 books. And today we're going to be chatting with the amazing Nicole Meline, who is not only a 4-time Ironman triathlete, she's also one of the original Peloton instructors and the founder of the soul-based fitness program, Alter. And what she has to share today about strength and fitness and about nourishing your body and even about learning how to tailor your workouts to fit within your own body's hormonal cycles is not only super encouraging and really different than any approach to exercise I've ever heard, but so empowering. I can't wait for you to dig into this powerful episode. Nicole, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to talk to you.
I am too. It's so fun to explore all of our alignments.
Yeah. So let's just start with kind of background. Tell us who you are, what you do, and how you got to be doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, I am a teacher at heart. I am a reformed academic. Went on a long academic journey through many in master's degrees in the humanities and went to seminary. And part of my journey has been understanding my work can break through the kind of conventional containers. So starting down conventional roads and then realizing that things, especially in this incredible online age that we live in, can take a brand new form that maybe the world has never seen before. So I fell into fitness as just a side job while I was in grad school when I was living in New York City. And that was just at the time that the boutique fitness kind of revolution was happening. So fitness as an industry was rising in a very new way. And it was just as Peloton was starting to take off. And so I came on as their second instructor. And what a whirlwind it was to be a part of this company and also really learn, what does it look like to build a startup? And what does it look like, I think most importantly and intriguingly, to build a lasting and passionate community, which is at the heart of any business, I believe. So I had this kind of realization about a year or so into it that I'm doing all the things that I love to do, teaching, inspiring people, connecting folks to their hearts, igniting their spirits in this way that I never would have imagined doing it. So the joke that I told my dad was, Dad, I'm dropping out of my PhD program to sweat in a sports bra on TV. He's like, great, this sounds really sustainable.
Yeah. Sure, he was very excited.
Yeah. And so since then, I've started my own platform and I offer online courses. I offer one-on-one coaching. And really the heart of what I offer is a movement practice called Alter, which is a shift in relating to fitness and relating to nutrition, relating to our body image from this place of feeling like our bodies are our enemies or this thing that's kind of constantly not living up to what we wish it was or looked like or felt like, to reconciling with our bodies and treating our bodies. I love to refer to her as her. Like that's this kind of massive mind shift for me, even as an ally. Like, what does it look like to engage fitness, to get curious about how strong I can get, to have a daily movement practice that brings me back home to myself rather than, just feels like this thing that I have to do because I'm trying to conform to some thing that I'm never going to conform to.
Punish myself and feel
Yeah.
miserable while I do it. I can relate to that so much because for so many years that was like exactly my approach to fitness and working out. Like I hated it so much. And really, and I think it even goes back to like, because we were talking for a few minutes before, and as you were like sharing what you just said, I was like, I played basketball in high school, right? And while it's starting, gosh, I don't know, fifth grade, junior high. My sister's 6 years older than me. She was this huge star. And she was, the town star, like record breaker and all the things. So I had this like big shoes to fill, and everybody was like, "Well, you got to play basketball. You're so tall, and you have to be just like your sister." And I think that like the whole right psychology that goes into that of just never liking it, but being forced to play. And I grew up in this small town where basketball was everything, especially women's basketball, the most winningest team in Washington state history. They've won like 20,000 state championships. So anyway, like it's like a dynasty team. And so practice was like brutal, right? Even in junior high, it was 3 hours every day. We were doing drills and all the things like, and I just remember hating it every minute of it for however many years I played, 8 years that I played, like hating every single second of it. And I think in my mind, I always hated exercise, right? Because I have just this association that it has to be brutal, it has to be hard, you have to be like on the verge of throwing up the whole time or it doesn't count. And what do you have to show for it at the end? Like, you're not even very good at it, right? Like, I sucked at basketball. It was terrible. And so, like, I think it really has taken my whole life to get through that. So, how do you work through that? Like, how do you help women work through that? That
Yes.
was a long response. You're like,
Oh, I love that. And
something to me.
I connect I grew up as a first of all, I feel like it's been important to my life as a coach that I didn't think of myself as an athlete. I thought of myself as not an athlete growing up. I started swimming right around junior high, which was very late for if you're going to be a good swimmer. And I got into distance freestyle because I didn't have talent for the other strokes, but I had grit, right? So um and to this day, I mean, I will jump in a pool occasionally, and just kind of do some laps in the summer, but I still have this like deep-seated rebellion in me from there were some years that I was training at like the highest level, 4 hours a day, morning workouts, evening workouts, and I very much relate to what you're talking about like how long it can take you to kind of heal from these relationships that we have to movement. And I think particularly, and I'm tempted to say maybe particularly with women, but I actually think that this is much more common in men as well. And it's just not as widely talked about, that it's so common for us to have this very secret dialogue that we'd be, totally ashamed that if anyone ever knew the way that we actually like thought about or talked to ourselves. That's very punishing, that has this extremely high expectation or hope, maybe is a better word, for what we can become through training, right? Through exercise. And oftentimes too, it's interwoven with diet and calories. If you've ever gone through like a very rigid diet of one kind or another that trained you to become very, very hyper aware, maybe of your macros or your calories, once you've kind of awakened that awareness, it can be very hard to ever shift out of that. So that there's always kind of some part of you that's like the police agent,
Mhm.
part of you, that's like, okay, you're eating this much, you haven't moved this much. And so you need to go and kind of like offset for that, right? In your training or in your nutrition. And man, is that an exhausting mindset to live in, right? And I think it's way more common than a lot of us really admit to. And I've definitely experienced being in and out of that at different moments of training. I've done Ironman triathlons, where I was in that like extreme kind of training mindset. And with I think that you and I were just talking a minute before we started about the what I like to think of as like the initiation of middle age. So I'm 45 right now, and I started to feel this kind of maybe around like 38, where you're kind of, first of all, you realize that your your kind of default mindset of like maybe someday, oh no, girl, that's today. Like what your those dreams that you've had, if you're not like materializing them, they're just going to be dreams, right? Like, and there's that wonderful urgency that I think we start to feel right around middle age, first around like what are we here to create in the world. And I love that because it can be really purifying, I think, to a lot of these kind of toxic mindsets that we maybe been in, where suddenly, what we this sense of like what we are here to create in this world, that can become most important in a way that maybe it hadn't up to that point, way more important than what your pant size is, or what your kind of calorie count is for the day or something. And so that's kind of the core of when I'm working with a woman who wants to shift out of an exhausting, lifelong kind of enemy relationship with her body. That's actually the sort of counterintuitive way that I often begin is, let's not even talk about that. Let's talk about what you are here to create in this world. Like, what lights you on fire? What are you passionate about? And what if we started to view food, the way you're nourishing yourself, sleep, the way you're resting and recharging, and exercise, working out, as actually these inputs and outputs that fuel your creative work in this world.
Mm,
And that is actually a big enough why that can motivate us. Like most days, I don't feel like moving in the way that I know I'm going to feel amazing afterwards. Like we've all never regretted a workout that we've done.
yeah.
But we've skipped tons of workouts because we just talk ourselves out of it, right? And so I think, like, first of all, normalizing that feeling unmotivated is very normal, especially in a more sedentary lifestyle that many of us are kind of getting pulled into. And really unearthing, like, what is that why that is big enough for those days, which are actually going to be most days that you don't feel like moving and training and engaging and building your strength. That's where the juice is.
I love that. I love that. So, it makes me think. So my thing, right? Because for so long I had the in my mindset, and then exactly what you're saying about the calories. I felt like I've got to lose weight. I got to count calories. I got to deprive myself. I got to be miserable, and then I got to run really hard and do all this stuff. I have to sweat. I have to burn calories. Like it just this toxic like misery that I would constantly put myself in for 10 years and then only to like not see the results, right? And so now it's so different for me where I go outside every day, right? Like my dogs, that's my cue is to go outside because my dogs, we were talking about our dogs right before too. And at 7 a.m., as soon as it's light out, they are like, Mom, it's time, right? They will start nudging me at my desk and they're like, Mom, come on, it's time at night. And so we live on this property. I go outside. And for me, like what motivates me, I think, is that I tell myself, you can do the easiest thing. It's okay. Doesn't even matter what you do. If you just want to walk around the property one time in your pajamas and your boots, it still counts. If you decide to walk a little harder or run for some of it, it still counts. If you do go on the Peloton app and do the like very easiest workout, it still counts. Like everything counts. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you're doing something. Just it doesn't even and I think freeing myself from this mentality of not having to always go like push a little harder, make it miserable, but actually just enjoy it and do what I feel like doing. And sometimes I surprise myself, right? Sometimes I'm like, I think I'll do a little bit more. Like I could go a little longer. And sometimes I don't. And it's either way, it's fine. I think it's like, it's crazy how freeing that is. But I don't understand why it's so hard for us to get to that point because it's taken years.
Yes. And I mean, I think there's so many juicy answers to this. Uh, Number
Tell me.
one, first of all, I think that the fact, like most of our kind of modeling and understanding about what fitness looks like is is tested on and modeled by men, by male bodies. And this is all changing, which is awesome. The Super Bowl just happened this past weekend, and Nike did their first ad in, I think, like over 25 years. And it was just celebrating women's sports because that's the future. And but I think that we're just beginning in the medical community and in the wellness community to really take seriously what it means to live in a secular body. Women, are living in secular bodies. And so, first of all, let's just acknowledge that in a given month, probably half the month, you're not at your highest energy. There's those weeks that you are at your highest energy, and then there's also weeks where your body is telling you that it's sending your resources elsewhere, right? And so it needs more rest, it needs more downtime. I think that that's just a really important thing to acknowledge, is that so many of the like running training programs that we might have seen, or weight training programs or we might have seen, did they assume that you're in this like total hormonal steady state like a male body, or do they assume the kind of secularity that is the reality, for maybe for your body? So I think that is actually one really important element to consider, is asking yourself this simple question of, what does my body need to feel strongest and most energized today? And sometimes that absolutely means, just like 10 minutes of stretching or a 10-minute walk with the dogs. And you need to, spend more kind of downtime that day. And other days, it's hitting the weights and it's, doing some sprint training or something. So I think that kind of coming back to that very basic question of, okay, I've got my training plan maybe, but what does my body really need today? And to feel more energized, to feel more powerful. And I think that you were kind of hinting at it, where we get so caught up too. So kind of one issue is like this question of, am I honoring my hormones and where I'm at right now? Second question um, is what you just said, a little bit counts. So I think both in the way that we're nourishing ourselves, the way that we're eating, and in movement, it's so common to be in this all or nothing mindset. And we do it with like any change that we're wanting to make in our lives that's an uncomfortable change. It's this all or nothing mindset is kind of this like excuse that we give ourselves, right? And so if I can't be 100% perfect, then I'm just going to fully jump like both feet off the wagon, right? Instead of the more realistic, no, a little bit counts. And also, when I tell myself, okay, I'm just going to walk for 10 minutes, or I'm just going to do that, 10-minute workout online or something, so often I would say like at least half the time that leads to more. Even
Mhm.
like I'll just, okay, I'm just going to do like a quick 5-minute weight workout. No, I feel good. I'm actually like in there for 15, 20 minutes, and then you're stretching out. And so giving yourself that really realistic, like, to be human is to live this complex life that's going to have curveballs every single day. And if you're only going to allow yourself to be in your full wellness, if you can show up and have that perfect uninterrupted week, of like the workouts being exactly as long as you want them to be, we're never going to get there. And that's going to kind of keep being an excuse to actually just move forward one brick at a time. I love that idea of like, I'm just out here laying one brick today, just one
I
brick
love
today.
that. I love that. It is so true, the all or nothing mentality, and it gets in our heads so much. And I think like we've been basically indoctrinated in it, but I never really like accounted for the fact what you were saying was so interesting about men's bodies versus women's bodies, and the stable hormones versus the cyclical hormones, and how that can really impact. So how do you even navigate that? So if you're a woman, you're like, okay, I'm listening to this and I want to start making changes and nourishing my body and doing the right things, but how do you even know like where to start with it?
Yeah. I mean, um, first of all, one of the things that we're learning right now, it's so exciting to see this huge emerging conversation about menopause, perimenopause, and just women's hormones in general, and fertility that we haven't really like had at this level before this time. It's so exciting. And one of the things that is surfacing in that conversation is just the importance of muscle, of building muscle basically once you hit 30, your body is naturally going to be losing muscle as you age every decade, losing a significant percentage of muscle. And so there is that bare fact, right? And then also, muscle is this organ of longevity, actually, that it's a huge element in helping to stabilize our hormones even. So I would say that the foundation of our training should be building muscle. That can look like so many different things. That can look like walking with a weighted vest, maybe if you love to walk, right? That can look like, of course, lifting weights. Um, that can look like resistance on a bike or an incline on a treadmill. But not only is the building of the muscle, the physical side of that training, but the the emotional and spiritual side of strength training is, I think, even more significant because it's when I can make that shift to remember, okay, yes, I'm doing my weight training, but every single time that I do that, I remember my strength. I remember how strong I am. I remember that I'm powerful. And it's this way daily of resetting and coming back into agency versus kind of victim mode, coming back into decision making and connecting with my intuition. So I think that I want to kind of lay that out as a foundation. If you're going to do one thing, if you're going to just try to commit to one element of training, it's a strength training program that's, even if it's like 3 times a week, that you're just intentionally strength training for as little as 20 minutes, right? That again, that could be like walking with a weighted vest, but even better if it's a strength training workout. And that being said, again, like looking at, and all of our bodies are, at different, we're at different ages, we're at different kind of places with our hormones. But I think kind of step one is to take a month and just journal and notice, like, how is my body feeling over the course of a month? And if you do that, especially for 2 or 3 months, like one sentence a day in the at noontime or before you go to bed, where you're just reflecting on, even just answering a simple question of how was your energy level today, you'll start to see the patterns. And if you have a somewhat regular cycle, hormonal cycle, you're also going to see that those patterns correspond to kind of where you are in your cycle, right? So those weeks that you are at your highest energy, optimize those for, like, that's when you're really kicking up those strength training workouts. It's it's so beautiful to me that the body the body grows strength secularly in the same way that we move through a cycle over the course of a month. So
Really?
and this is one of the kind of, like, it's such a simple truth, but it was so profound for me to really realize we build strength in rest. So when you do a weight training workout, right, or any kind of a workout where you're challenging yourself, maybe it's a high intensity interval training, and you're breaking down your muscles, and so you're not building strength during the workout. You're building strength after the workout. You're building strength in that 24-hour window where, your muscles are rebuilding themselves. They're recruiting more muscle fibers than you had before. So it's actually the quality of our rest that is going to most support our growing strength. That feels like very important principle. And when
Yeah.
we look at, yeah, so like the body is growing stronger in these cyclical patterns, right? Of like intensity and then rest and rebuilding, and then intensity and rest and rebuilding. That's really similar to the kind of cycle that we're moving through hormonally. So to, kind of start to become aware of those, maybe like 2 to 3 weeks of your cycle where you do feel higher energy, that's when you're going to be doing more of the intensified strength training, more of the high intensity interval training. And then those weeks where you're lower energy, that's more of like the yoga, the foam rolling, the, just kind of like more of the stretching, more of the walking, maybe the like zone 2 training. So I think that's one way of starting to connect with your own intuition. And I think especially at midlife too, this changes for all of us. Our bodies force us to finally start listening to them, which can
That's
be
very
super
true.
annoying
Yes.
and is so good, right? To, like, even if we've maybe spent our whole lives kind of dissociated from our bodies, this portal, it kind of forces us to really attune to like, where am I and what do I need now? Like, what does this body now today need?
I love that. I love that. And I have never, I don't know why it's never occurred to me to like just track that like energy levels versus cycle levels and see where that feels. But I find that so interesting. Okay. So going more, a little heavier on the strength
Yeah.
training in those energetic weeks, what does that look like? I think, because I think, especially for like us 40, 50s, grew up in the 80s with aerobics and the 90s
Yep.
with all the
Yeah.
that, like, it's hard to even imagine like that going to the gym wouldn't mean an hour on the elliptical machine or something
Mm-hmm.
like equally calorie burning, because that's all that we ever think about. But I think for so many women, like this idea of strength training or lifting weights feels very intimidating. So how do you get past that? And like, what's the best way to do it?
Yes, I love this question. So my workouts now at 45 have two goals. Number one is to build muscle because I know that by default, I'm losing it. And number two is to be an emotional processing experience. So it's there's this incredible book that thankfully it's kind of everywhere now called The Body Keeps the Score, and this whole body of somatic research that's grown out of this work that's tracking like the extent to which our bodies hold trauma, the extent to which our bodies hold on to experiences that we've had, grief, just every feeling. And there's this beautiful connection between the word emotion and motion. And like maybe when you've danced or you've been in a yoga class or you've even just been out on a run or out on a walk, things surface that oftentimes don't in any other way. Even maybe even just like sitting on a couch talking to a therapist or a friend, there's something about putting the body in motion that unearths what's in here. And I love to remember that if I'm not expressing what's in me, then it's in me. It's stuck in me, right? So I now think of my workout, and this is a big part of the vision of the altar practices that I lead, the movement practice, as this daily moment to first of all ask myself, what am I feeling today? Like what is the biggest feeling that's swirling around in me? What are the thoughts that are on loop? What are the anxieties that I'm in? Actually notice them, because otherwise they're just there looping, kind of draining our energy, right? And to give myself a chance in movement to express that. So if it's grief, if it's gratitude, if it's anger, confusion, joy, playfulness, right? Like I like to say all vibes welcome, right? That there's at least one moment during my day where all the vibes are welcome, and to give motion to that emotion. So to allow myself for just the space of a few songs even to be primal, to like connect to my wild heart and let all of that come out, right? So those are the two goals that I have when I'm moving, when I'm training now, is yes, build the muscle, and also build the heart muscle, build the spiritual muscle, and allow all that is stuck in here to flow, and kind of ask myself on the other side of it, okay, I've released everything. What do I want to intentionally pick up again? And what do I want to just leave at the wayside, right? So that's my woo-woo answer.
That
But
is woo woo, but I kind of love it. Like, so do you? I'm like such a literal person, right? Like I'm not always very woo woo,
how do you
but
let the feeling flow?
how do you let them feel it? Yeah, exactly. So do you like do you say it out loud to yourself, like, or do you just kind of like do a mental check in? I'm trying to imagine how this, like, what would I walk into my weight room? I'm gonna say, how do I feel today? Self? Is that like literally what you do?
Yeah, I will always start a practice by putting my hands on my heart, or maybe a hand on your heart, a hand on your belly, and just breathing into your palms. And literally all of our listeners just doing this for 2 breaths right now brings you home immediately. It brings you into your body. I like to think of it as riding the elevator down a floor from your head into your body.
Yeah.
And you're noticing, I mean, even just by doing that, I was like, oh, I've been sitting in this kind of like bent posture for several minutes. I'm feeling that tension in my lower back, right? Just noticing how your body even is in space and what's your energy level today, right? And asking yourself that really simple question, what's the biggest feeling that I'm working with today? And I actually really love phrasing it that way. The biggest feeling I'm working with. Like, what if I work with this feeling instead of suppressing it, instead of letting it maybe come up in times in conversations where it's not going to be of service? Like, let me bring this into this workout and work with it so that your workout is as much a work in as it
Mhm.
is a workout, right? And I, to kind of circle back to your question about weight training, which I totally agree is super intimidating. And I think it's also kind of been like a masculine dominated like world, or it has sort of masculine branding. And so you can walk into most, and we also kind of tend to think that, oh, to do strength training means I'm going to need to join a gym with all the machines that I need to have. I mean, if you like to do that, great. And I think there's really something to be said for getting a strength training coach, even if it's just for a few sessions, to kind of
Mhm.
set you up for the next like 3 months or so of goals, and so that you know how to use these machines safely. Because so when you're working with weight training machines, that's allowing you to load up the body in a much heavier way than you're going to be able to do just with hand weights at home. But I think starting with hand weights at home is a great way to start. And I actually created this 10-day strength training challenge that is called Uplift,
I love
that is designed specifically just to be, they're under 15-minute strength training workouts. So it's like,
you.
it's like you're all out of excuses.
Yeah,
And
make it
it's
fast,
yeah,
make it
super
easy.
simple, a kettlebell, some ankle weights,
Mm.
some higher rep upper body weights, like very, very simple equipment. And you can start to just build that infrastructure, right? That strength infrastructure at home.
I love that. Yeah, I actually so I used to work out at the gym when we lived in a different house. That gym was like 2 minutes from my house with a trainer for gosh, 4 years. I worked with him and he was awesome. Every I'd work with him 3 days a week, different workout every time, never had the same workout twice for 4 years. And but
Oh,
I felt like that was so good for me as somebody who didn't understand strength training at all, like even just like how to do all the things, right? Like so I feel pretty confident now. And then we moved out to the country and I have my barn, turned one of those barn stalls into a weight room, and I love that. Like I mean it was convenient before when the gym was basically next to our house, but this is no excuses. And it's so easy when you have just a few, and it's not like elaborate. I didn't spend tons of money on setting it up. It's very rustic. It's in a barn, so it's dirty too. But it's
I'm dying
like
to see it. This is like my dream.
it is. It's so great. Like, and because I'm like, well, I'm not going to worry too much about it because again, it's in a
It's a
barn.
gym. Yeah, yeah.
But it's a gym, and it's all I need is to just have the weights. I got the mirrors, and it makes it so easy, but it also makes it so easy to just do 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like whatever I need in that day, instead of feeling like, oh, I got to go to the gym for an hour and I like make it a whole thing, which I kind of sometimes would dread, right? Like, oh my God, I'm too busy for this today.
And we'll talk ourselves out of it.
And we'll talk ourselves out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the trainer kept me accountable because I was paying for it and prepaid, and so I would go to my appointments, but I would never go on my own. And now I think I find it so easy to just do a little bit, because every bit counts.
There's actually really intriguing research right now about like the physical payoff of, say, like 6 5-minute intervals throughout the day versus, going and doing a 30-minute workout,
Yeah,
30 40 minute workout. And there's been some interesting studies lately that actually say it's more effective for your overall metabolism. Let's
really.
say, especially if you like are doing a lot of sedentary work and I mean,
Yeah.
if you can get a standing desk, do it, because even just the weight bearing, that's so much better for just building overall muscle, bone density, all of that as we age, just to stand rather than sit. But so especially if you are sedentary or you're maybe working from home, and just every hour, even if you have like a watch or on your phone, you can set a timer every hour, 5 minutes, to just do some air squats, some yoga poses, some lunges, right? Like a little upper body routine. And the efficacy of that metabolism wise, that you're getting your heart rate up every hour during the day, and so your metabolism is working at a higher frequency anyways, versus just doing that for like 30 or 45 minutes at the gym. There's interesting research that's showing that that actually is probably more, it supercharges our metabolism more. So I think
I love
that, yeah, and you also just feel better, right? During the course of the day, if
Mhm.
you're getting up and moving for a few minutes, or even I'm such a fan of like a walking pad underneath your desk. You're not on it all day, maybe, but just like
Yeah.
maybe like 30-minute intervals throughout the day, you just get on and walk really slowly. And yeah.
I do, and I don't stand nearly enough. And it goes up and down. It's really fancy. I thought, oh yeah, I'm gonna stand all the time. I need to
Yeah.
get better at that. I love that. So I had another question for you. Back to back to what were we talking about before the strength workout?
Weight training, kind of like intimidation, maybe with weight training. Yeah.
I remember what it was. It's a dumb question. So back to you ask yourself the question, hand on your heart, and
Mhm.
then do you like tailor your music to what your mood is?
Yeah. So the altar practices that I lead are, um, each one is themed, and the playlist is like the captain for the whole experience, right? So it's very music driven.
I love
And yeah, so if you just want this done for you, I've done it for you. But I mean, even as simple as like dancing to one song every day for 5 minutes, where you're moving in a non-linear way. So we're moving all day in linear ways, meaning it's task oriented. It's either like task oriented or training oriented. So we're doing
Mhm.
squats, we're doing maybe yoga flows, we're doing types of movement because we're trying to build a certain kind of physical strength or accomplish a certain kind of physical task, moving in a non-linear way. So this really fun question that I love to think about, especially in our wild modern world right now. Forever, for millennia, humans have gotten together and danced around fires. We've had ceremony together. And there's this, across all cultures, like there's this sense that there is a certain like deep primal need that we have to periodically gather and move in this primal, wild, communal way, right? And so I
Yes.
love to ask this question of, what does that look like now? What does it look like to dance around fires together now in this like wild modern world? And because I think we still need it. And so
Yeah.
to move in a non-linear way, to move in this way that opens you to possibility, to curiosity, to playfulness, to also the true expression of whatever feeling that you're working with that day. So turn on it. If you've got 10 minutes to move today, dance for 5 minutes and just let whatever is flowing through
Let
you
it come
come
out.
up and express, and then grab some kettlebells.
I love that. No, I seriously,
Yeah.
because sometimes I do want to dance, and I'm a terrible, terrible dancer. I have one
Oh,
signature move.
yeah.
I call it tiny fists, and I go like this, and that's my dance move. But I love it. And sometimes I'm
Tiny
just
fist
like, oh,
counts.
tiny fists got to come out. They got to dance. And my daughter, when she was little, she's 15 now, so she doesn't do it really anymore. But she used to do like surprise dance parties. I forget what she would even call it, but when she was little, she was so cute. She'd be like, Mom, it's time for a dance party. And we would have to do a dance party for like a minute, right? Like, and it was just the funnest little thing. And I remember that so fondly when she was little. And I think we lose that as
I
we just,
love that you've brought that up. Yeah. When I teach altar practices, I often say, check in with your 3-year-old self and your 90-year-old self.
I love that.
How did they want to invite you to move today, to dance today, to train today? Right. And it's this like I think at these two poles of our life, we do have this kind of deep freedom and wisdom that we can get conditioned out of, right? And so to have a practice of reconnecting with that, and it's it's been such a powerful thing for me in kind of my own reconciliation process, or my like allyship process with my body, to think about pretty regularly, to just kind of pause for a moment and think about all the times that I have healed. Like by this point in our lives, hundreds, all the colds that you've come through, all the scratches that your skin has reknit itself from, that maybe the surgeries, like serious injuries, pregnancies, or like all the ways that your body has healed over and over and over again. Like this is this miraculous thing that you've been given, this miraculous vessel. And to have that kind of honor and reverence and wonder, and so then what does it look like to feed ourselves from that perspective, to nourish ourselves from that perspective, to move from that perspective, right? With this, like, wow, this miracle machine that I live in, how strong can it get? How energized can it get at this moment of my life?
I love it. Wow. It's so encouraging and so uplifting to hear this. And I think for anyone listening, I hope, like, I just hope you're taking this, right? Like it's okay. You can give yourself permission to just do a little bit at a time, to actually enjoy it, to check in with yourself and to feel it, to bring what you need in that moment rather than have this sort of preconceived idea that it has to be hard and miserable, and just start loving your body through movement. Such an encouragement. And it's so like, so what probably everybody needs to hear, for sure. Me.
Mm, mm.
I love it, Nicole. I
So
feel like
glad.
we could keep talking for a long time about
I
this,
think so.
but we are out of time. So, final question: how can we connect with you? Where can we find you online? And of course, we will link to all of your things in our show notes for anybody who's listening. So if they want to find your workouts and find all your stuff, let us know how we can find that.
I love that. I have found that our heart's work draws our heart's people. So
Ah,
it's been so fun to put work out into the world and feel that draw, like friends that I hadn't yet met, right? Friends that I was just waiting to meet. So my online home is NicoleMeline.com, NicoleMeline.com. I'm also on Instagram and social media at Nicole Meline. And you'll find at NicoleMeline.com both a bunch of different programs, courses, but then you'll also find at NicoleMeline.com/alter, the Alter platform membership. You'll find that Uplift Strength Training Challenge if you just want like a kind of 10-day, very doable, beginner friendly challenge to start with, or if you want to just dive into some of the Alter Together practices, I'd love to lead you. And I also have a free gift at NicoleMeline.com/gift, which is some practices, some meditations, even some indoor cycling rides if you have a bike, and just so many ways to move and be moved.
I love it. I love it. And of course, we will link to all of that in our show notes. Nicole,
Beautiful.
thank you so much for joining us today. This was awesome.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that about does it for this episode. Remember that you will find the link to Nicole's website as well as to her Alter program and all of her other resources in the show notes. And if you know someone else who might be interested, please be sure to send it their way. And then, of course, be sure to subscribe to the podcast to be notified of future episodes. And I will see you back here for another new episode very soon.